The following is a Shaw TV Public Affairs presentation. Constituency Report is produced as a public service by members of the BC Legislature through the facilities of Shaw TV.
Hello and welcome to Constituency Report. I'm your host, Maeve McGuire, and today we're speaking with Sonia Furstenau, MLA for Cowichan Valley and BC Green Party Deputy Leader. Hello.
Hi, Maeve.
Welcome.
Thanks. Great to be here.
I thought we'd start at the beginning. What got you started in politics?
Well, I grew up in a family where we paid a lot of attention to what was going on in the world around us. And so coming home every day, we'd be listening to CBC, to The World at 6, and As It Happens, we were very aware of what was happening in politics. My parents were big voters. And then when I was in high school, I had a teacher who sort of recognized a spark of interest. And so he helped me go to Young Parliamentarians in Ottawa, where I met my MP and got to know cabinet ministers and learned about Parliament. And then I went to Model UN the following summer and realized at that point that it was really important to me to be involved. And in my 30s, I was very involved with a group called Results Canada, an advocacy group, and then with Citizens Climate Lobby. And that's education and action and advocacy, and trying to get decision makers and policy makers to recognize the value of evidence-based decision making.
Yeah, so environment is obviously very important to you, and you once said that it all comes down to trees. Tell us about that.
So when I was 20, I moved out to Vancouver Island from Alberta, and I went on a camping trip to Carmanah, and I realized I'd never really been in a true forest before then. And even just thinking about it, all the colors, the different shades of green, the lush forest that we were in, where there was life everywhere. And making that connection between what we need to thrive, which is air and clean water, and the role that trees play in that, and realizing we have a duty and a responsibility to protect trees and ecosystems and to recognize that there is a connection and a relationship between us and trees.
And then Shawnigan happened. How did you get to Shawnigan?
Yeah, so that's, 24 years later. So I was a teacher, and I was teaching in Victoria, and we would spend our summers up at Shawnigan at a cabin, because Blaise, my husband, he grew up in Shawnigan and his family lives in Shawnigan. So we would take our kids and spend our summer vacations at Shawnigan. And we were there back in 2011 and invited the new principal of school over for dinner. And the next day he phoned up and said, do you want to come for a job interview at Dwight School? And one thing led to another. And 3 weeks later, we had moved up to Shawnigan, and our kids were enrolled in a preschool and grade 1, and we started a new life.
How did you get involved with the soil issue?
We noticed right away that there were these signs around the community with skulls and crossbones, and so we obviously wanted to know what this was about. And the following summer was the first big public meeting on the contaminated landfill proposal, and that was 2012. And hundreds of people showed up to that meeting. Everybody essentially was opposed. And then the following Easter, the government issued the draft permit, and we went away that weekend with our family to Tofino. And all I remember from that weekend is just reading that draft permit over and over again and thinking, how could a government think that dioxins and furans and hydrocarbons and heavy metals are acceptable in a community's drinking watershed? And I made a decision that weekend that all of the advocacy work that I'd been involved in with Blaise, I was going to apply what I'd learned and stand up against this permit.
Nowhere better than Tofino to make a life-changing decision.
That's right. Oh, go out to the West Coast and everything becomes clear.
So keep going. What happened then? How did you get more involved with it?
So we started with letter writing campaigns and community meetings and doing what I'd learned from advocacy, which is direct conversations with decision makers, with MLAs, and trying to get that engagement and have the people, the government hear what the community was saying. Unfortunately, that August, the government issued the permit. And at that time, essentially two streams. The Shawnigan Residents Association started down a legal path where they appealed the permit through the Environmental Appeal Board and then ultimately through the BC Supreme Court. And we started a community building effort. And I say community building because it was really important that we not be rooted in just despair or disappointment or hatred or anger, that we root our efforts in building community and out of what we loved. We loved our lake, we loved our community, we loved our families, and we wanted to have a bright, positive future for Shawnigan Lake.
The activism, the advocacy on this brought you to the Ledge.
It did.
And was that your first time at the Ledge, or had you already been involved in any other way?
It was certainly, as a teacher, I was engaged in teaching my students about parliamentary systems and democracy, but this was my first, definitely the first time I'd ever stood on the steps of the legislature and given a speech to a crowd. There were over 1,500 people there that day, and that was a big day, and I think really establishing where I stood on this.
So we have a video that you might like to reminisce on. It's the rally at the Ledge, where you gave quite a powerful speech. What was the outcome of that?
I think the outcome was that people felt, that their sentiments were being reflected. We had no intention of ever backing down from this effort, and that's what it was about.
So let's take a watch of that video.
We will persevere because we are on the side of right, we are on the side of justice, we are on the side of clean drinking waters, we are on the side of the future of our community of Shawnigan Lake. We will not give up.
Well, you had conviction.
There was a lot of things happening that day. We'd prepared for that rally for several weeks going into it, and I was in a media scrum right before that speech, and I was informed by a reporter that the Ministry of Mines had just given the company their amended mines permit, and they were free to start dumping that day. And I felt betrayed because we knew that the process for that amended mines permit should have taken several more weeks, and to learn on that day, nope, it's all been said and done, and it speaks to what was at the core of the issue for us in Shawnigan Lake, which was we felt that the government had let us down, that the process had let us down, and that as a community we were betrayed by what was happening.
Right. I'd like to go back to the community building aspect because that was a theme throughout your election as well. Mm-hmm. You said before as well that when you were presented with the Shawnigan issue, you knew exactly what to do. And part of that was building this community. And lots of people ask about that. I have an issue. How do I get my issue raised to the level that you did? So what would you recommend, or what did you learn from that?
Yeah, and I have visited several communities, and I've talked to people on the phone and met with people about, their issues. And I always come back to the same thing, is make this about building community. And then the outcome, you always have this positive outcome, which is you've built a stronger community. So come together, have food together, share stories together, support each other, build a movement based on love, because you're doing this out of love for your community. So make that the central piece, and then it can sustain itself. So anger and hatred and despair, they don't sustain us. They leave us depleted. But love and community building raises us up, makes us stronger. And that's really the advice that I would always give to anybody who came. And I think it's important. And it was the same approach we took in our campaign.
We have another video that I'd like to show you that really just symbolizes exactly what you just said about the campaign.
The Cowichan Valley is magical. First of all, it's stunningly beautiful. But the thing about the Cowichan Valley is the people. There is something amazing about the people up here. They're really rooted to the place and connected to their communities, and the commitment that I see in people up here to making things better it's amazing. It's an amazing place. We'll never leave. And recognizing that when you build a strong community and deeply connected community, you're going to see benefits on all levels, right? People are going to do better and take care of each other and take care of their environment. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned from this. It's not about a single person, it's about working together.
How does it feel watching that?
It makes me so happy to watch. I see so many people that I really love in that video. You know, people like Luke and Laura, who were really the heart of the campaign, Jeannie, Aaron and Mariana, who are now volunteering in our constituency office. You know, I feel a deep love and affection for these people. And I think that by the end of our campaign, and it was 6 months, nonstop, the election campaign, on election night, the room was filled with this kind of love and happiness. Everybody in the room was very happy and joyful. And I thought, the outcome, again, isn't about winning or losing this election. The outcome was about how we got there and the good that we brought to the community while we did that.
I remember you talking about some of the doors you knocked on, and they were life-changing moments for you, meeting some of the people that you met. I wonder if you can talk about what you learned from that experience.
So when I go back to how we felt betrayed in Shawnigan, and we lost our trust in government, and when I would talk to people at the door or talk to people on the street or in kitchen table meetings, and that deep desire to restore and rebuild that faith and trust in government. And it's so important. In a democracy, that link between citizens and government is built on trust. And when that trust begins to erode, we start to put our democracy at risk. And I've studied history, I've taught history, I've seen this pattern in when democracies start to disappear or when you get authoritarian states in place. And so to be able to make a personal connection with people in the community, with people I'd never met before, and to be able to have those really open and honest conversations about rebuilding trust was incredibly important.
Thank you. We're going to take a short break now, and then we'll come back and learn more from Sonia Furstenau. Welcome back to Constituency Report. We're here today with Sonia Furstenau, MLA for Cowichan Valley and BC Green Party Deputy Leader. So let's talk about the election win. You ran in a riding that is NDP strong for many years. How did it feel?
It was amazing. It was obviously, you know, one of the highlights of my life, and then to be thrown in, you know, immediately into this very intense world that we were in, where suddenly there was no clear winner in that election, and as Greens we had the balance of power, or as we like to call it, the balance of responsibility. And, you know, it was a real privilege to be on the negotiating team and to be working from a place of our values, our vision and hopes for this province, and working on an agreement that we think really fulfills those fundamental points of how are we going to move this province to become a more fair province and one in which the economy really does serve the people as opposed to the other way around.
That was a fascinating time for all of BC. We sat there for 2 weeks wondering where we were going to end up. Did you feel a sense of responsibility on what the outcome of that negotiation was going to be?
Huge. You know, I was saying by the end of it, I was about 4 inches shorter than I was when I started. The weight was so heavy. And it was isolating. We were, you know, we'd signed confidentiality agreements. I spent a lot of my time down here in Victoria. We were in meetings almost daily. And I couldn't talk to anybody about it other than, you know, the people who were at the table. And so it was a very intense time, and there's no way to prepare for it. It was, here you go, you know, you've had 3 hours of sleep, it's the day after the election, you're live on Power and Politics, go. And fortunately, I think all of the work we'd done in Shawnigan helped to prepare me for this, and also my long-time interest in politics. But you can never be prepared for the kind of situation that we found ourselves in. And now, you know, the real job is to continue to demonstrate we do have stable government. In fact, we have stable government in BC that's working across party lines, that's putting the interests of people of BC first, that's trying to work on evidence-based policy making. And we're shifting how we approach governance in this province, and that's really important. And I think that this is one of the strongest arguments for bringing in proportional representation, is that you see in the long term parties move out of their hyper-partisan stances where everything is about taking down the other party and begin to move to a place where let's find those common points. Let's work together in the best interests of the people of BC. And let's recognize that as adults, as elected officials, our first duty is to work together in a collaborative and cooperative way.
Yeah, the relationship piece is something you talk often about. I'm sure those 2 weeks with everybody at the table were relationship building, as you've said. How do you continue that? What kinds of things do you make sure keep happening in the Ledge and your work at the Ledge to keep building those relationships?
Open lines of communication. You know, that's fundamental to any relationship, is that there's a lot of communication happening. Honesty, integrity in your communication, and ultimately recognizing we are here first and foremost in service to our constituents and to the people of BC. And so at every moment you need to be asking yourself, am I working in service right now? And I find that, you know, as long as I'm answering yes to that question, things are going in a way that I'm proud of.
Let's think back to some highlights. It's only been 6 months, but a lot of things have happened in that time. You know, you were sworn in June, and it just took off. So tell us some of the highlights in that time.
Well, one of the big issues in Shawnigan was the professional reliance model, was the interaction between the quarry operators and the engineers they hired to assess and design a contaminated landfill. And we always were uncomfortable with that relationship. And as I started to learn more and more, I learned that this was out of government legislation that brought in what's called the professional reliance model. And there are a lot of problems with that. It's not just Shawnigan. Shawnigan was a symptom of this problem. And so one of the biggest highlights was definitely moving forward along the announcement of the review of professional reliance, that Mark Haddock from UVic Environmental Law would be heading that review, and that it would be looking into how do we ensure that these kinds of situations don't happen in communities in BC like they happen to us. That was a very pivotal moment for me. I mean, I felt like so much of my effort to get into this legislature grew out of my feelings that, again, that trusting relationship between government, the trust of the citizens that decisions were being made properly and that we could trust those decisions. This was a first and very important big step towards restoring that trust. And so that was a huge moment for me. Seeing the legislation around a referendum on proportional representation, the legislation to ban big money in politics. I mean, this is huge. And again, it comes back to trust, integrity, participation in democracy, people feeling like the government is working for them and is truly representing them.
And you've put forward your first bill.
I have.
Was that exciting?
A private member's bill. Yeah, that was very exciting. And it was building on work that Andrew Weaver had done in his first term. And it came out on the anniversary of the release of the film Sharkwater, which is a documentary about the impacts of shark finning to our oceans and to the ecosystems. And so it was a bill that would restrict the possession and distribution of shark fins because we're seeing over 70 million sharks a year are killed for shark finning. And this is an industry that really has an enormously negative impact on the ecosystems of the oceans. Sharks are so important as the top of the food chain for keeping the ocean in balance. And it was a real honor to present that private member's bill on the anniversary of Rob Stewart's film. He tragically passed away while filming the second Sharkwater, the follow-up, but his parents are carrying on the work, and I had spoken with them the day before. So that, that was a big moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion in the type of work that you're doing, and I think that we're starting to see that when you stand up in the House and you give any of your speeches. There seems to be coming awareness around your ability to get a message across in a very poignant way. We saw recently the issue around decorum in the House. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you wanted to speak to that.
I do want to speak to that, and I keep coming back to this theme of the importance of the institution. And when you look at parliamentary systems, we trace them back to the Middle Ages. And respect for the institution is so important. And what we've seen in the House, and it's been commented on a great deal in the media, is this lack of decorum. There's name calling, there's heckling, there's yelling. You can't hear questions being asked or answered. And the Speaker has been working to try to improve that. And it kind of came to a head this last week when the House Leader for the opposition party was making the case, no, we should be allowed to continue with, calling ministers by different names, like Minister of Paralysis or whatever it is. And the Speaker came back and made a decision that, no, he's going to stand by that we should be addressing ministers by their proper titles. And I stood up and spoke to that. I hadn't planned to, but as the newly minted House Leader for the BC Greens, now that we have our official party status, I spoke from my heart about the importance that we are debating ideas and policy, and that we're holding a government to account not by personal character assassination, but by raising important issues that matter to the people of BC. And there's an appetite for this. We don't want to see politics descend to what we're seeing south of the border. We want to see elected officials who represent the best of us and who represent true leadership. And I think we have to hold ourselves to a higher level as elected people, because we represent our constituents and we represent the people of BC.
Now, I can't let you go without talking about your amazing staff.
Yes.
Tell us about the staff.
This is the invisible thing behind successful, any politician, but is the incredible staff. And we have extraordinary staff working in the legislature and our constituency staff, you are included, but you and Luke, but also Evan, Taylor, Sarah, Jamie, Claire, Stefan. These staff are amazing. I've never had such a privilege to work with such amazing people.
A day in the life. I don't think we can sum it up in the 5 minutes we have left. How does it how do you do it? Three-member party, all the critic files, people who want to come and meet you and speak with you. How do you manage?
You know, every day I wake up and I think, I am so grateful that I'm doing this job because I'm so passionate about trying to bring positive change to this province. And as busy as it is, we walk in through those doors in the morning, and as you know, it doesn't stop often for 10, 11, 12, sometimes 14 hours in a day. And you don't have time between one thing and the next. So, you know, you might be giving a speech in the House, and then you come and you have a meeting, and then you have a minister's meeting, and then you have a briefing, and then there's a radio interview to be done. And the emails are piling up and the phone calls are piling up. But we're seeing real change, and we're seeing an impact in how we're choosing to approach things. Again, bringing that evidence-based decision-making to the table and insisting on going back always to the idea that as legislators, as decision-makers, as policymakers, we can do the absolute best. And it doesn't have to be about ideology or partisanship or the party. If we put the people first and we put good policy making first, it's an extraordinary opportunity to be involved in. So it's invigorating, it's exhausting at the end of the day. You just go home, lie down, get up, start again the next day. But I feel truly grateful and truly lucky to have this opportunity.
That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank our guest, Sonia Furstenau, MLA for Cowichan Valley, for coming in today. Thank you, Sonia.
Thanks, Maeve. It's been great to be here, and thank you to everybody for watching, and I look forward to the next time.
If you'd like to connect with Sonia, you can do so via Facebook, Twitter, or at her website, soniafurstenaumla.ca. Thanks.